Yo, what's up, y'all? How's everybody doing? You already know what it is. It's another episode of Equip the Podcast, and you know the saying, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Hope everybody's having a great weekend, noon or night, depending on when you're listening to this. And if you've been continuing to listen to me or to watch or whatever the case may be, I appreciate you. Make sure you like, subscribe and do all those things. And if it's your first time listening, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day just to listen or to watch because you could literally be doing anything right now, but you're choosing to take some time out just to listen to another podcast episode. So I definitely appreciate it. And now we're in part two of the Christmas is Pagan series. And if you're new and figuring out what the series is, what we're pretty much talking about today. So we're pretty much talking about really because in the first episode, part one, I just talked about the basis of the podcast episode. And pretty much the whole point of this is, yearly around Christmas time, Easter, stuff like that, there's stuff that's always floating around the internet talking about origins of things and how these holidays are just copycats of some pagan religion and stuff like that. And this day, December 25th, and all this other different stuff is because of some type of pagan connection and things like that. So you see it all. You might have seen it before. You might have seen certain posts, certain people say these things. So I kind of wanted to make a series, and I kind of talked about it before in past episodes, but I kind of wanted to make a series being more attentive and actually looking into more of these claims and things like that because I think a lot of us make decisions off of if this stuff is true, right? And I really want to look more into it because I think people do need to know where do we get these days from? Why do we celebrate this? Why is December 25th is chosen? Why, these things? And I think it's important for us to actually talk about because people are making decisions, people are being convinced, if you will, of these things. And I want us, if we are choosing not to celebrate something, which at the end of the day, you don't gotta, holidays, you don't have to. It's not commanded. Well, especially specifically for this holiday per se. But I want us to make the right decision on why you should or shouldn't celebrate something, not from something that seems like it comes from this thing when it really doesn't. So that was really the whole point of this series. So next week, I'm really going to dig into all of like the claims from December 25th, from Christmas tree, all the stuff on all the stuff and things like that. But this week, I really wanted to focus on the consumerism part, like the consumer part of Christmas, like the money being spent, the gifts, all that stuff, right? And to be honest, this is part of Christmas I'm not really a fan of, and still isn't a fan of to this day because the reality is we spend a lot of money on Christmas, y'all. A lot of money, right? A lot of money. Like, matter of fact, let me just show you how much money we spend on Christmas. Like, we spend a lot of money on Christmas, y'all. Like, and I'm included in this. Yes, I is. Or yes, I am. So we can look through over time, right? Roughly, how much money do you think you personally will spend on Christmas gifts each year? And here's a little graphic chart right here of the dollar amounts that's been spent since like 2000, where it was up at 900, went down to 700, and you see it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But look at this. Not this is average American people are spending this much on Christmas. 900 some odd dollars. So almost $1,000 is being spent by each person for Christmas. Like, that's a lot of money, y'all. For Christmas, for gifts and things of that nature. That's a lot of moolah. $1,000 almost for each person, not just a total for each person. Now, let's look at some other stuff. All right, hold on. I thought I had it up here. Okay, hold on. Here's another one too. It talks about how Americans spend approximately 1,000 on Christmas each year. 71% of U.S. holidays budgets are assigned to gift purchases. U.S. sales have grown year over year for over a decade. 96% of Americans buy gifts, for their families and stuff like that. All right, right. So honestly, Let's look at how much money is spent on Christmas worldwide. Look at this. Average Christmas spend around the world. Here are further details about the money families spend and blah blah blah. So $1.3 trillion around the world. That's crazy. Let's check the U.S. real quick. Let's check Christmas real quick. Look at this. 716 billion, 2019, 2020, 783 billion, 2021, 889 billion, 2022, 963 billion. I wonder where this is coming from now. What date is this? Christmas business stats. Okay. Let's look right here. Oh no. Let's go back. Let's go back. Uh, How much we're spending on Christmas? So here's another article. Right. How much do Americans really spend on Christmas and what everyone is buying? All right. Let's look at this big paragraph right here because I think this is what I see right there. Look at this paragraph. Okay. In 2021, U.S. holiday shopping generated $886.7 billion in sales, a 14% increase from the previous year. According to the National Retail Federation, NRF, the average American plans to spend $826 in 2022 on Christmas gifts, food, and decorations. Of that $826, around $500 are spent on gifts for family members. The most popular of these gifts are clothing, toys, and gift cards. Around 76% of consumers buy each of these items every year. On a surprise area, Christmas spending is on pet presents. The average American pet receives $50 in gift cards for pets. 34% of Americans' parents receive gift cards for their dogs. 22% purchase gifts for their cats. Meanwhile, only 19% of Americans purchase gifts for their in-laws. So dang. That's crazy. So we're purchasing gifts more for our for our pets than our in-laws. I mean, I get it. Sometimes we don't get along with our in-laws or don't really care for them, or don't have a great relationship with them. And our dog and cats are like our family. It's kids, so I don't see no issue with that. Anywho, so okay, so I really want. So I just wanted to start the video off because pretty much the average American almost spends about $1,000 alone for Christmas for decorations. Almost $500 for gifts. You feel me? Like we spend a lot of money during this holiday. Where $800 billion is being spent between the gifts, decorations, food, and all that stuff for Christmas. All that's being spent. Like if you think about it, I wonder like the percent of our economy is coming from Christmas. Think about it. What, like maybe like 15%, 17% of our economy is coming from Christmas. So if you think about it, if we cut off Christmas from America, bruh, that would hurt the economy like crazy, yo. Like crazy. So I wanted to bring this up because, you know, people will use this as a reason to not celebrate Christmas because it's part of the dollar. You know, they like this holiday because people spend money, things like that. You know, and to a certain degree, I can understand that because this is one of the reasons why I didn't care for Christmas as much. If I'm going to be honest, because with us spending all this money, and if I'm being honest, a lot of that comes from stress. You know, for parents in particular, coming from stress for parents because not everybody has money to spend like that for Christmas. You know, you might have kids and stuff like that. And you want to have them have a nice, fun Christmas and stuff like that, or you might be able to have it other years, but maybe something happened with your job financially this year. You don't are not able to have it this year, and now you know you are going to be stressed out because how you're going to be able to have the Christmas decorations, the presents, the gifts that your kids want, things like that. Like a lot of parents be stressed out. People be not paying bills to have Christmas, and delaying certain payments and stuff like that to not have Christmas. Doing different things. Some people probably be even taking out loans for Christmas, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff that parents do that this holiday can cause a lot of stress on people because of the material stuff that comes with this holiday. I mean, I'm just being honest. Even kids, where kids can look at what other kids got and feel down and about and be like, dang, this person got a new PlayStation and the new J's and a new iPhone and all this other new stuff, and I just got some clothes, if that, you know what I mean? Or I just got these pajamas, or I got these socks, or I got this, or I got that. And Christmas can automatically turn into a comparison thing where it's like, oh, that's cool that you got that, but dang, look what I have. Dang, like my parents didn't get this. Dang, I don't, like Christmas is really can turn into something that's very, very materialistic. And that can be very, very dangerous because we can go from a holiday that you have traditions to a holiday where it causes stress, where it causes mental health go up, where it causes you to do things that are not financially smart, that it causes stress on kids to the point where now you're comparison, now you're being jealous, now you're being maybe greedy because you wanted something that you didn't get, and now you're mad about it, or you wish you would have got more presents for Christmas. And I think that's one of the worst part about holidays because I feel like holidays they're not always bad or anything like that, but we can celebrate it in a way that's bad. And I think this is the major part when it comes to Christmas. You can think about it. Even holiday grief. People have holiday grief during this year where they don't have a lot of family, so they see everybody else doing family stuff. They start to feel depressed, or maybe maybe a family member passed away around this time. You know, like, there's a lot that actually goes into this holiday than just joy and peace and all the other things that is being promoted. Like, there's a lot that is promoted during this time of year, and it can be very harmful if we allow it to. Now, that's the thing. So doing this stuff on Christmas is not really the issue. It's what we allow it to be. Is what we're setting our value up on. Like, what do we truly value it during this time of year? Right. And I kind of wanted to quickly read two passages because I think they kind of can hit on this point, or we can kind of learn from this point. Um, so let me go to Hebrews chapter 13, and I'm gonna read up to like verse 8 real quickly. It is Hebrews 13. I'm gonna start in verse 1. I'm gonna read all the way down to probably actually hold on. I'm gonna read to. Actually, I'm gonna read the 6. I'm sorry. All right, this is Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1. Let brotherly love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you are also are in the body. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge sexually immoral and adulterous. And then this is the point I want to get to in verse 5 right here. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can men, do to me? All right. So here in this Hebrews passage, this is a writer, talking about as a believer, like given like pretty much this is what a believer godly life should look like. So let brotherly love continue, meaning between believers, let believers between one another, brotherly love continue between one another, right? And do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, right? So don't neglect to show hospitality to people who are unbelievers, right? Remember who those are in prison and are being mistreated in prison, since you are in the body, because around this time as well, believers in Christ, especially in the Roman Empire, it was something that was not popular, something you really couldn't do publicly, and something you could be risked or be thrown in jail and things like that. So there's even believers in jail. So the writer of Hebrews reminded us to remember those who are in prison and mistreated, since you are also in the body. So remember those people, Let the marriage bed be held on among. This is about marriage, keeping marriage, honoring, God honoring. And then in verse 5, the writer of Hebrews says, keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So we could confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear what can man do to me. So this is a very, very important verse, I believe, because I know in this context, this is talking about sacrifices and things being pleasing to God. How do we live? How do we, handle one another? Things like that. And I know this is within the context of what the Hebrews writer is writing to here, but I think it's important because it's saying keep your life free from the love of money. Because in another verse it says the root of all evil is the love of money. I know people be trying to say, "Oh, love money is the root of all evil." No, it's not. It's the love of it, right? It's the love. The key word he also said here, also keep your life free from the love of money. Love of money pretty much meaning like you love it as it's number one. Love it as that's all you desire for. That money is your true value in life, and that's how you look at life. And if it ain't about money, and that's number one in your life, then that's a huge problem, right? And he says to be content with what you have, right? For God says, I will never leave you and forsake you. So we can be confident and content with what we have is because the Lord is my helper. Like in verse 6 says, we can confidently say that the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? So the best way to deal with greed or to fall into materialistic things when it comes to Christmas is to remember to be content with what you have and realize that the Lord God, he gives you everything that you need. He gives you every blessing that you need. That you have every blessing that you need to have. So you can combat the love of money or greed and things of that nature with remembering us to be content with what we have, what the Lord blessed us with, and to remember that God still provides for us, that he won't leave us and forsake you. But we have to remember that at all times. And I think this is just another reminder, this is something we need to be reminded of. I feel like we can easily fall into these traps or these feelings this type of way when it comes to this. So this is something we should be reminded often is look, let's contempt. I know it is very tempting to fall into it. It's very tempting to want something really badly. So it's so tempting to want these material things. It's so tempting for us to place a value on it. Because the world will tell you that people who are valuable has this, has that, have this, that has that job, has this title, that title, and all these other different things. That's what the world tells us. But what God tells us is what's on the inside of a man, the heart of a man, that truly matters. And I think when it comes to Christmas, we can easily get caught up with the material stuff because that's what matters in this holiday. That's what sells money. $8 billion. That easily could be a problem. And the thing is, it's not about if you got it, don't spend it. Because there's nothing wrong with buying things for this holiday per se. There's nothing wrong with that. It's where you're choosing to put it and how much value you're willing to put it. And are you placing it number one in your life? I think that is the question we need to answer. And the way we can combat that is for us to be content because God is the provider, that he won't leave us or forsake us. The Lord is my helper, like in Hebrews, what it was just said. And I think that's one way we can help deal with being tempted for this greed or for love or for all this material things is remember to be content because the Lord provides all that we need. And real quickly, let's look at 1 Timothy real quick. And this is 1 Timothy chapter 6. I'm starting in verse 3. I'm going to read down to, I'll probably read down to only in verse 9. Or 10, my bad, 10. So this 1 Timothy chapter 6, I'm starting in verse 3. If anyone teaches a doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ and the teaching that accords with godliness, he is puffed up with conceit and understands nothing. He is unhealthy, craving for controversy and quarrels about words which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil suspicions, and constant friction among people who are depraved in mind and depraved of the truth. Imagining the godliness is a means of gain. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless, harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. See, told you, love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, not money. Love of money. It is though this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. Now, the context of this verse is that Paul, he's writing this to Timothy, and right now he is writing to Timothy to talk about false teachers and also to talk about true contentment and how to deal with greed. Right? So Paul is warning them about false teachers teaching a false gospel and how they don't really care about the true gospel, right? And to beware of anyone who teaches a different gospel and do not agree with sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ. So he's warning them firstly about this, right? Which, to be honest, even though I know he's writing directly to a church and they're talking about specifically about the gospel of Jesus Christ, I mean, you can also take this as a warning not only for false gospel, but also for us being greedy and greed, which some of this has to do with the false teaching and gospel that Paul was warning them about during this time. So if you look at verse 6, right, that's the part we're going to get to here. But godliness with contentment is a great gain. With godliness, contentment is a great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless, harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. So let's get into this really, really fast. All right. So remember that godliness with contentment is great gain, because the reason why it's good to be content at times and realize, like, you know what, I ain't got it, I ain't gonna spend it, I'm gonna try to do other things. The reason why it's a great gain because that is a way that we can combat greed, is by understanding that we are blessed with everything we need. That, unfortunately, sometimes we might have to take the L on certain things for certain holidays at certain times. But the great part about it is it's a great gain for me to be content, for me to be appreciative of what I have, because that's really what sustains you in life anyway. Especially at moments when you don't have much, or moments when you are going through a rough patch, because everyone goes through it from time to time, and sometimes maybe all the time we go through it. But what helps get us through is the contentment, with understanding that God will provide in the ways that I actually need, not the ways I want. Because a lot of times we just want our contentment and blessings to be the way we want it, but not the way we actually need it. And that God actually provides for us in a way that we actually need, not want. And that we can be content there. Remember, we just read that in Hebrews. So it's a great gain because that is a thing that we can always depend on God and be appreciative and content the blessings we have, because that's how we actually get through life. That's how we don't get consumed with greed and love for money and all these material things, right? Because we brought nothing into the world anyway. Verse 7, we brought nothing into the world and we cannot take anything out of it. So any material things that we have, the truth is we ain't going to take it all out anyway when we die. It's great to have it. I love my clothes and shoes and stuff that I have, but guess what? When I die, it's not coming with me. All the shoes and clothes and the things that I like, it's not coming with me when I die. It's not. All these things are going to stay here for whoever I can pass them down to, but they're not coming with me. I didn't bring it in with me, and I'm not going to leave with it either. Right? Paul also says, but we have food and clothing. With these we'll be content. And a lot of us, we do have food and clothes. We do. A lot of us has food and clothes that we can be content with having. Right? We might not have all the gear that we would like. We might not have all the stuff that we might want, but we do have enough clothes on our body to provide us warmth for cold, keep us cool when we're hot, and we have clothes and we have a roof over our heads, at least some food to eat. We need to be content because we have those things, which is a huge blessing. And in verse 9, but those who desire to be rich fall into temptation. into senseless, harmful desires that plunge into ruin and destruction. And I think, what you're saying here is like, I don't think at times it can start innocent where it can be like, you know what? I just want to have the desire to to have these things. You know what I mean? Like I don't have much, and I'm a desire to get a better job, and I'm a desire to do this business or to do this, so that way financially I can be set because maybe I didn't grow up with a lot of these things. And maybe later on in life, I want to have kids that have these things, right? Or I want to get out of my situation, things like that. I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but if we're not careful, it can turn into us with a unhealthy desire to be rich or unhealthy desire to want all these things, where we're lusting after it, if you will, in an unhealthy way, where once we get it, then we got to do all this crazy stuff to keep it or to keep this mindset. Because that's the mindset that's always glorified in the world. You gotta grind, you gotta do this, you don't need to go to sleep. It's all about money. I don't care what you're doing, I'm making money. Or I don't care to listen to you because you're not making much money as being all this other different stuff. Like in the world, this is celebrated a lot. But those who desire for this stuff can fall into a lot of different things, simple harmful things, right? Because you see famous people all the time. They got all the money in the world, but they're doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff, either to keep it or because they have it, because they have the access, because they have all these things. Like time and time again, you see celebrities, they have all the access, all the money, everything they could possibly want, but yet they be committing suicide, they be getting drug addictions, they be doing other scandalous sex crimes type stuff. Like you see it all the time. Because at first you might have the healthy desire to want to change your situation and to do these things, but if you're not careful and on your guard, then you can plunge into ruin and destruction, which we see a lot that happens with people with these material things. We see it happen all the time. It's all the time. We see that. And for this context, what we're talking about, we can have an unhealthy, like you can have a desire, like, you know what? I just want to have a good Christmas for my kids or my family, or I just want to do this stuff. Or you know what? I want to have these gifts, so I'm gonna ask my parents for this, that, and the third, or ask for this, right? And it can always start harmful, but if we're not careful, if we're not guarded, if we're not really content, the type of contentment that the Lord gives us, we can easily fall into comparing our lives to other people's lives. We can go into, man, I gotta work all these crazy hours to try to get these gifts while meanwhile I'm not really spending time with my family. Or I'm not gonna pay these bills so I can have this Christmas stuff for my family. Or I'm gonna take out this loan, or I'm gonna do all this other different stuff to have this type of Christmas that we want. And we gotta be very careful of that. And that we're not setting ourselves up financially, that we're not setting ourselves up mentally, that we're not setting ourselves up spiritually. Like we really need to be careful with the materialistic things that come with Christmas. Because it can easily turn you down a wrong path. A path that can lead to ruin and destruction. I've seen it. I really have seen it. I even caught myself in the past times not paying stuff because I just wanted to get my parents these right type of gifts or holding stuff on hold or stuff like that. Like even stuff like that, stuff that I shouldn't even did. Or I shouldn't even felt the pressure to do because my parents ain't expected it. My parents don't care that they have to get disrespected stuff. But this is something that I selfishly agree. Like that's something I wanted to do. Which is genuine. Like you want to get your parents a good gift, but okay. If you don't, guess what? They got birthdays, they got other days. You can just buy a gift anytime you want, just because you love them and care. It doesn't have to be because of pressure of a gift under a tree. And I think that's what the dangers of Christmas is. It can do that. Um, and then verse 10, real quickly. For the love of money is roots of all kinds of evil. And it is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves. Like, and this is where they're talking about how because of greed, people have fell away from the faith, from the gospel, from Christ. And I kind of just want to wrap up with this because we're almost at the 30-minute mark. But I just want to wrap up with this because my whole point of this is not to say like buying and spend a whole bunch of money on Christmas is wrong. necessarily, because it's not. A lot of people do it. I've spent money on Christmas stuff like that. It's not that. It is how much value are you putting into spending this money? How much value are you putting into Christmas? How much infatuation do you have with the materialistic stuff of Christmas? Is you buying stuff and doing stuff for Christmas causing you to fall short or behind on your bills or debt or your stress or your mental health, like with your kids or looking around other people? Are you comparing your life to other people? So now you're feeling down for not, having this stuff or not being able to provide certain things. Like, what is Christmas causing you to do? And that's my point of sharing the two verses that I shared, because it boils down to greed. It boils down to elevate material gain, which it should be as high as it is. And everyone's a victim of it, whether you want to think about it or not. I've been a victim of it. And since I've been a victim of it and see how I treated other people, it turned me off a lot about this holiday. Because even though in the church we use this holiday to celebrate the birth of Christ, but now it's changing to spending money, gifts, all this other different stuff. And Jesus is just a sprinkled secondary thing that we just throw in there. Like, we have to remember, this is just a holiday. This is a holiday that we can celebrate the birth of Christ, but it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory. You can do all this fun stuff, but it's not mandatory. If you have to cut some stuff off one year because you just do it. Make it up some other way. Just do it. Don't put so much all in value into this, into materialistic things, because it can easily lead you down a path that you don't want to go down. And we need to be careful on how we celebrate this holiday. If you do choose to celebrate this holiday, you got to be careful and not to put so much elevation in material things, because guess what? You didn't bring it in here. It does not leave it with you. Guess what? The people had a good Christmas, and guess what? The gift card will be spent in a couple months. You whatever material gift, whatever food they got, that goes away. That's already gone. It's gone away. On to the next year. It doesn't sustain you. It's just something to make people happy right now, and then it just goes away. On to the next year, and then the next couple months is something else. Us being content of what we have, us being thankful for what we have, us being content to have with God to support us, to hold us down, to give us the foundation that we need to sustain us. That is how we are appreciating what we have. That's how we're not getting caught up in materialistic things. That is how we celebrate the proper way. That's how we don't elevate this any higher than it needs to be. That's how we don't get caught up in the consumerism part, is to be content and allow God to help us be content and to be thankful with the blessings that we already have. And to know that he's still a provider in other different ways. Like, you can still even celebrate Christmas in a way without even having to be financially set. There's a lot of organizations and churches that help families with presents. There's different organizations and things like that. There's different. You can even tweak some things and do a different traditional thing that you never did before if you don't have it. Right? There's other alternatives you can always do besides putting yourself in trouble or lusting after something unhealthily. So that's pretty much what I just really wanted to talk about, is the dangers of this, is the consumer part of Christmas an issue. It's a huge issue. But if we replace our infatuation with the material, with the traditions, with all this stuff and all the harm it can cause us, and we replace it with contentment in the Lord, it will help us not be tempted, help us not to fall trapped, help us not to be so infatuated with what people posted on social media, and be content with what we have, and help us not to elevate material gain and greed and stuff like that in our hearts. That's what that combats, is us being content in the Lord and what we have. So, yep, that's all I got for you guys today. So, I pray that you have a good week, mood, or night, whenever you're listening to this, and stay blessed. Peace.